Houthi militia sacks cabinet amid massive protests against the group's repressive policies. Five soldiers killed in Abyan province during confrontations with Al-Qaeda militants. Recent Saudi Houthi talks offers hopes for sustained peace truce in Yemen. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. This is the English news with me, Angel Zazi. The Houthi rebels sacked their cabinet, which controls the country's north, amid the eruption of massive protests. The decision was announced by the group's leader Abdel Malik al-Houthi during a celebration to mark the birthday of the Muslim Prophet Muhammad in the capital Sana'a. More is in the following report.
Yemen's Houthi rebels sacked their cabinet, which controls the country's north, amid the eruption of mass protests. The decision was announced by the group's leader Abdul Malik al-Houthi during a celebration to mark the birthday of the Muslim Prophet Muhammad in the capital Sana'a. The rebel leader said in a televised speech that the formation of a new competent cabinet will serve as a first stage of essential change to correct policies, serve the people and address economic problems. The move came a day after widespread confrontations between the rebel forces and residents across the streets of Sana'a and the provinces of Hodeidah and Eb. The protesters had been demanding various improvements, including salaries, better government services, access to electricity and clean water, and measures to counter economic decline. The confrontations erupted first on the eve of Tuesday, when people gathered in Tahrir Square in downtown Sana'a to mark the 61st anniversary of September Revolution Day. This annual event, celebrated on September 26, marked the ousting of Imamate rule back in 1962, which led to the establishment of the Yemen Arab Republic. Houthi security forces reportedly used live ammunition to disperse the demonstrators, resulting in numerous injuries and arrests. Tanks, armored vehicles and armored personnel were also deployed throughout the streets. The Houthi group has been facing increasing pressure from residents in their areas amid rapid economic deterioration. Yemen has been marred in a civil war since late 2014, when the run-back Houthi militia seized control of Sana'a and forced the Yemeni government out of the capital. The war has killed tens of thousands of people and pushed the country to the brink of starvation.
A Yemeni security official announced that joint forces were able to control the strongholds of Al-Qaeda during a campaign to pursue the organization's members in the coastal governorate of Abyan. This comes after the killing and wounding of 10 Yemeni soldiers after Al-Qaeda members carried out traps with explosive devices that targeted the security forces. This report has more details.
Al-Qaeda has since exploited Yemen's conflict in 2014. It cements its presence in the impoverished nation. At least 5 Yemeni fighters from a secessionist group were killed in clashes with suspected Al-Qaeda militants in the country's south. The fighting occurred in the southern Abyan governorate, where the secessionist forces led by the Eastern Arab Forces reclaimed several areas under the militant control. 3 of the secessionist fighters were injured in the clashes. It is unclear how many of Al-Qaeda fighters died in the battle. The United Arab Emirates backed opponent militia in Yemen's south and is at odds with the internationally recognized government. Al-Qaeda branch in Yemen is active in Abyan and regularly carries out ambushes against Yemeni forces. According to sources, at least 4 fighters from Shabwa Defense Forces were killed when an explosive device detonated near an ambulance in Shabwa governorate.
Peace opportunities gained momentum recently after the talks between Saudis and Houthi militia in Riyadh. However, the attacks that targeted Bahraini soldiers are telling a different future for peace. More is in the following report.
On September 14, a Houthi delegation and a team of Omani diplomats traveled to Riyadh for peace talks, the highest-level Houthi-Saudi official discussions on Saudi soil since Yemen's civil conflict began 9 years ago. On September 20, Saudi officials announced that the visit yielded positive results. The negotiations come 5 months after the previous session of Omani-mediated Houthi-Saudi talks in April in Sana'a. The most recent talks appear to provide greater hope for a long-term truce between the Houthis and the monarchy, which would be essential for Yemen to achieve long-term peace. At least 4 delicate issues, however, remain unsolved. The first challenge is the payment of salaries to public sector employees in the Houthi-controlled north, which is home to around 80% of Yemen's population. The Houthis demand that the wages of public sector workers in regions under their control be paid, but their opponents fear that the money would be used to fuel the Houthis' war machine. The third concern has to do with Houthi demands that the Saudis permit the unrestricted reopening of Sana'a International Airport, as well as other airports in Yemen and the country's seaports. While these airports and ports have already opened up significantly over the past year, the Houthis demand that they fully reopen. The final issue regards the Houthis' access to funds in Yemen's Aden-based central bank. The pace behind the discussions appears to have intensified owing largely to Amman's much-lauded mediation. However, these talks will probably move slowly, with progress coming incrementally given the long-standing distrust that exists between the Houthis and the Saudis.
U.S. envoy to Yemen met with the incoming President and CEO of National Council on U.S. Arab Relations and Adalah Foundation, Roosevelt. The special envoy looks forward to working with Roosevelt on advancing common goals, including peace and security for Yemenis and people throughout the region. The governor of Taiz discussed with the U.S. ambassador a number of issues related to lifting the siege on the city. The governor touched on the conditions resulting from the continuation of the war and the siege imposed by the Houthi militia on Taiz. For his part, the American ambassador affirmed his country's support for the transition towards sustainable development in Taiz.
أبي مات بشارع 40 دحين أنا أشقى على أسرتي مع باقي اللي أنا أصرف عليهم كل شيء. أنا اسمي أنس غصيب سيف، عمري 12 سنة. أنا أشتغل بورشة حديد من الساعة 7 للساعة 6. أحيانا أسرع، أحيانا أقص، أحيانا أرنق، أحيانا أنقش، أي حاجة أنا أعمل. لا الساعة لما تدين الساعة 6 أوقف. أنا وقفت الدراسة عشان ما فيش أحد يشقى على أسرتي، أدرس إخواني الباقي من هون 4 وأنا الخامس. أحلم إن أفتح ورشة أبي وأشقى على أسرتي وأندي لهم مصاري وأدرس إخوتي الآخر الجامعات وأطبخ أي شيء.
Save the Children International has warned of the catastrophic impact of the reduction in humanitarian aid to Yemen. In a statement to its office in Yemen, the organization indicated that funding for the humanitarian response plan decreased to $1.38 billion so far. The organization said the commitments made by donors at the high-level pledging conference in February merely reached a third of the funding requirements. A report by the United Nations Population Fund confirmed that women and girls are at increased risk of exploitation. The report explained that 7.1 million women and girls in Yemen need services to prevent gender-based violence. The UN fund indicated that women and girls in Yemen bear the burden of the crisis, as about 80% of displaced women are women and children. Coming next in the news. Beekeepers in Shabwa province are set for honey production season.
I'm Jean-Nicolas, the UNHCR representative in Yemen, and I would like to provide you an update on the situation on the ground. As you probably know, Yemen has been labeled one of the worst humanitarian crises of our time. A staggering number of 80% of the population indeed relies on our humanitarian aid for their daily survival. We know how to save life, but UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency, is lacking critical funding. 1.2 million displaced by the conflict will not receive emergency shelter kits, and therefore will have to live in the open, subject to the element and to abuse. Will not receive cash assistance, which allows them to buy medicine or food for their children or their elderly parents. On top of that, we won't be able to continue our protection activities, which are critical in a country in conflict. We need you. Yemeni people need you today. Will you make a life-saving gift today?
Welcome back. The U.S. envoy to Yemen, Tim Lenderking, confirmed that the Houthi attack that targeted Bahraini soldiers earlier this week is not consistent with arrangements for achieving peace. Lenderking stressed that there is a desire among the parties to the conflict to reach a peace agreement, but he acknowledged that mediation efforts are still facing difficulty. This report has more on this.
The United States Department of Defense has strongly condemned an attack on Monday that killed Bahraini service members and injured others. The Pentagon said in a statement on Wednesday, such unacceptable attacks threaten the longest period of calm since the war in Yemen began. We extend our heartfelt condolences to the people of Bahrain, to our partners in the Bahrain Defense Force, and to the government of Bahrain. A Yemeni Houthi rebel drone assault killed a Bahraini officer and soldier guarding Saudi Arabia's southern border early Monday, according to Bahrain's military commanders. The Houthis did not immediately admit to carrying out the attack, as negotiations between Riyadh and the rebels continue. According to the military statement relayed by the state-run Bahrain news agency, several Bahraini soldiers were also injured in the strike, but no more details were provided. The statement said this terrorist attack was carried out by the Houthis, who sent aircraft targeting the position of the Bahraini guards on the southern border of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, despite the halt of military operations between the warring sides in Yemen. The statement did not specify the site of the attack. A third Bahraini service member died on Wednesday, BNA reported. The bodies were eventually returned to Bahrain, where they were received by an honor guard and top military authorities. The drone assault marks a significant increase in military measures after more than a year of relative calm in Yemen, during which peace attempts gathered traction. Last week, Houthi leaders concluded 5 days of discussions in Riyadh on a prospective ceasefire agreement, the first public visit by a Houthi team to Saudi Arabia since hostilities began.
Several employees of the Tai's Fish Preservation Company staged a protest denouncing the attack on them by elements belonging to one of the military brigades. The protesters called on the responsible authorities to play their role in protecting investment, arresting the aggressors, and bringing them to justice.
We staged this protest today to call for ending armed attacks against the workers in the company. Some armed men have fired bullets against the workers in the company, and this caused a state of panic among them. The attack hit the generators and fuel rooms. We call upon authorities to arrest those behind the attack.
Beekeeping has been an age-old practice in Yemen, dating back to the 2nd millennium BC. Yemeni honey is renowned for its delicious flavor, with one of the finest varieties coming from bees that feed on the cedar tree.
عسل السدر ممتاز لأنه فيه فوائد فيه علاء كثير أكثر من العسل اللي حق المراعي ولا هاي. هذا السدر أكثر تصديره إلى البرة ومنه فائدة أكثر.
From 2022, WFP has supported 5,180 beekeepers in Yemen with training and cash to increase resilience among urban and rural households.
جزاهم الله خير. أعطانا النحل الجمعية وذا الحين نشتغل أكثر دخل على النحل. ونجي الصباح إلى عنده نلبس الثوب ونجي ونعطي حقه الماء وسكر ونشوف شيء مرض فيه وش أي حاجة نشوفها فيه إنك تقول تعالي تو من قدامنا ما يهتلك عليه كله. وبعد شهر نجنيه نبيع العسل.
Yemen's beekeepers produce over 1,500 tons of honey each year, which provides income for 100,000 people. This honey is considered to be some of the best in the world and is vital to the local economy of this war-torn nation.
The beekeeping sector in Yemen facing increasing challenges today, most notably the cessation of honey exports to foreign markets and difficulties in moving bee colonies between different pastures due to landmines. More on the challenges that face beekeeping in Yemen are within this report.
As soon as the days of the fall season begins each year, thousands of beekeepers in Shabwa Governorate commence preparing for producing cedar honey, which is considered one of the finest and most expensive types of honey due to its therapeutic and nutritional value. Nasser bin Atif is one of the beekeepers who is famous for producing and selling original honey in Shabwa, and currently now is preparing for the season. He spreads thousands of beehives around the cedar trees in the valleys so that the bees could be nurtured.
Producing cedar honey starts from the beginning of September to the end of November, when honey is taken from the beehives, which is considered one of the best treatments for diseases mentioned in the Holy Quran and recommended by doctors. Honey contains more than 17 benefits, and one of the best is cedar honey, which is famous locally and internationally.
The honey production stage before it's completely finalized and displayed in the markets lasts for a period of approximately 2 months, which is the period during which beekeepers transport the beehives from one region to another to search for the cedar tree until the bees complete building the hives of honey.
فهذا من شهر 9 إلى نهاية شهر 11.
From September until November, honey is being collected so that people get ready for the cedar honey season to benefit from it, such as having it or selling it, whether inside or outside Yemen.
Beekeepers in the governorate face many hardship, troubles and difficulties, some of which are the result of high production costs, which in turn reflects on product prices.
يواجه النحالون الكثير من المصاعب.
During the period in which beekeepers commute, they suffer from the high price of fuel and the difficulty of moving between governorates due to the routes being cut off, in addition to the collapse of the local currency, so the price of honey decreases despite its high quality and the troubles that beekeepers face during its harvest season.
The number of beekeepers in Shabwa, according to the latest official statistics, reach about 26,000 beekeepers, and this number constitutes an estimated 37% of the beekeepers in the Republic. Despite the large number, beekeepers in this governorate still use traditional methods and means in honey production. This requires professional reinforcement training programs to raise their capabilities in this regard.
Here is a reminder of the main headlines. Houthi militia sacks cabinet amid massive protests against the group's repressive policies. Five soldiers killed in Abiyan province during confrontations with Al-Qaeda militants. Recent Saudi Houthi talks offers hope for sustained peace truce in Yemen. This is the end of the news. It was Angel Zazi. Thank you for watching.